Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our forum today. My name is Tony Collins. I'm the project coordinator at the Registry of Births, Deaths and Marriages, and I will be your MC for this afternoon. Could I just ask one thing before we get started? And I know we've all got our mobiles with us, but could you please either turn them to silent or turn them off so it doesn't interfere with the flow of the presentation today? Well, we've got an information-packed session for you today, including presentations from 4 of our subject matter experts. But before we get to that, I'd like to introduce Brendan Kieran. Brendan is from the Aboriginal Land Council at Redfern, and Brendan is going to conduct the Welcome to Country. Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Brendan. I'm cultural representative of Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council. A little bit of background on who I actually am. My connection to country, in 1971, my mother left a place called Cootamundra Girls' Home. She came down to Sydney and she gave birth to a beautiful little baby. In 1971, I heard that. Will me and you'll have a chat after. In 1971, where I was taken away from my mother in Crown Street Hospital. 5 years ago, I found out I'm one of 10 that were all taken away. My mother and my aunties and uncles were taken away. My grandfather was out mustering cattle. Welfare turned up, took my aunties and uncles away. When he turned up, he shot himself and my mother went mentally insane. So 5 years ago, I found my family. I've met 3 of my brothers, 1 sister, none of us talk. And I'm not going to go into the details of what happened to my family through the homes. But mental health is one of the major issues that I have in communicating with my family. I was what I think one of the lucky ones. I was fostered into a family where my father was the first and only blind Aboriginal physiotherapist in this country. He came from a place called Tanami Desert, halfway between Alice Springs and Darwin. So my whole life I grew up Northern Territory sort of culture, language, song, dance, painting. My school of hard knocks was done at a lovely place called King's Cross. I was like a moth to the light. As soon as I was old enough to leave home, straight up the cross. So I've spent my whole life here in Sydney. I love this part of the country, Sydney. Love the waters. The land we're on today is Barramadigal land. And Barramadigal is one of 29 clans of the Eora Nation. The boundaries for the Eora Nation are surrounded by 3 of the most beautiful rivers in the world. The Hawkesbury River, the Nepean River and the Georges River. And within those boundaries you have the Eora Nation, 29 different clans. Barramadigal, of course, Parramatta, that's their main homeland over there at Parramatta. Parramatta actually means a lot of eels, river of eels. So one of the many hats that I wear is, I mentioned earlier, cultural representative of the Land Council and doing welcome to countries and smoking ceremonies. So on behalf of Metro Aboriginal Land Council, I'd like to officially welcome everyone here this afternoon. As an Aboriginal person, I'd also like to welcome everyone here as well, because 10 years ago, you would never have had a black fella up here welcoming anyone to any land, let alone one as good looking as me. On another note, I just think it's a little bit ironic, and I've got to drop this in. This is the Irish in me. Births, deaths, and marriages, and funeral directors. I'm currently I'm a qualified trauma specialist counsellor. I've worked in communities for 20 years. Suicide prevention, crisis, you name it. Child protection, all facets before, during, and after removal. One of the things that my people struggle with is and especially something I struggled with was obtaining information regarding my family from certain services. Information that I felt was mine, and I needed that information. That was what made me me. So that process with some services is still to this day, with Stolen Generation, and a lot of our kids that are being removed to this day, another Stolen Generation, are finding it hard to get that identity and tracking down, legal documentation, birth certificates, all that sort of stuff. Funerals, a lot of Mob Out West is where I currently work. I get all the time requests from my countrymen around funerals, finding it hard to come up with the cost of burying their relatives and making that travel back to those funerals as well. So I'd just like to throw that seed out there, and don't think you're the only ones that I've targeted over the last 2 weeks either. Last week was National Reconciliation Week. Personally, I feel like we don't need to reconcile for anything. Reconciliation, to me, my understanding, is a married couple. They separate, they reconcile to get back together. I don't think we ever had that relationship. I feel as though what was taken just needs to be returned. And I did a welcome to country at the new BMW at Rushcutters Bay, and the owner was actually from Germany, was there, and I said to him, look, I'm willing to forget all about the 200 years rent if you give me that brand new BMW sports car. Of course I didn't get it, but I planted the seed, give him a bit of food for thought. So once again, I'd like to welcome everyone here today, and thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to share my story. Every time I share my story, that's a little bit of healing for me, and I think the truth's got to get out there. So once again, thank you and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Just before we open up to the presentations today, I'll just run through a few things. We've got 4 presentations. After each one, they'll go for about 10 to 15 minutes each. And then after each one, we'll have a Q&A session. That'll go for about 5 minutes. And then we have to move on to the next one. If you don't get a chance to ask a question during the Q&A, don't worry, our presenters will be with us after the session today, and you can approach them personally and ask them any questions that you may like. Just so you know, the toilets are out the door here and to my left, if you need those. In the unlikely event that we have to evacuate these premises during the presentation today, we will go out the room, down the stairs, and out into the car park area where we will assemble there. After the presentations today, there is also a tour of this facility for anyone who may like to come along on that tour. We'll have 2 groups because we've got a rather large group here today, so we'll break up into 2 groups, and the tour will go for about a half an hour. So if there's anybody who'd like to partake in that, by all means, we'll organise that after the presentations today. The last item there is about 10 minutes of your time. I'll come back to that after our first presentation. So, for our first presentation today, we're going to go straight to the top. We have the Registrar of Birth, Deaths and Marriages with us today. And for those of you who don't know Amanda, just a little bit of background. Amanda started her working life with the registry as a team leader with our Newcastle regional office back in the day. Since that time, she has worked her way through the various departments of the registry to the position of registrar, which she holds today. There is probably no one who has the depth and the breadth of knowledge that Amanda has when it comes to the registry and the many facets of its operations. Today, her presentation will focus on the end-of-life journey. To hear more about that and the registry's operations generally, would you please welcome the Registrar of Birth, Deaths and Marriages, Amanda Yana.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this amazing facility, the new Coroner's Courts and Facilities. And thank you all for taking the time to come with us, to come over here this evening. So I'm going to talk to you about, that was a great photo of me, I wish I still looked like that. It's only 4 years ago. I'm going to talk to you about the end-of-life journey work that's occurring at the moment in state government. So who has heard of the end-of-life journey work that we're doing across New South Wales government? No. One. Okay, so we've actually sent some correspondence out, so we might actually do that again after this evening, to invite you to come and participate and give us feedback and work with us as a government on how we can look at the end-to-end life journey for our citizens in New South Wales. So the first part, what I thought I'd do is actually just take you through the first product that we're looking at launching, and that is called our End-of-Life Navigator. So we based it on the New Zealand Navigator that's been launched a few years ago, and it's worked really well. So I'll talk you through some of the customer experience, but before I forget, up the back of the room is a gentleman standing up, Ben Finn, and after the presentation this evening and after you've been on your tour, if you would like to have a look at the Navigator system and actually give him some feedback or get more details about the system, he'll be here for as long as you want to talk to him for, won't you, Ben? So that'd be great if any of you could, but we'll send you out a reminder again that if you would like to participate, we would love to have you help us through this piece of work. So the first one, as I said, is the End-of-Life Navigator, and it's about how might we better inform people what we do leading up to and after a death. So what's the approach that we've used as a government is that we're creating a comprehensive, actionable online information resource to help people deal with the death of someone in New South Wales. So we're using Citizen Insights. So the team that has been created is specifically created to be able to get the insights from people. It's a very multifaceted team, and it's based in central government. So the resources are being built with citizens and with funeral directors as well. We've not had a lot of people participating, but the more of you that can participate, the better, because the better the resource will be for you as well as government and citizens. So we're listening to users, and we're able, because we can do that in the way they're building, they can change as they go as well. So what the problem was, that users are finding that they don't know what to do when someone passes away. If you've never experienced it before, what are the first steps? And you all know this better than any of us do, because you experience and live it every single day with the people of New South Wales. So what we found out, or what the team found out when they talked to people, is that there's a lot of information. We all know that. It's distributed across lots and lots of sites. Sometimes it's incomplete, it's unclear, and it doesn't always consider the different circumstances. So what they've done is created a beta site. And it's what to do after death. So there's some different steps that go through it. So what are you looking for? So first steps, how to organise a funeral or who to contact. So the things that we'd like to put in there, for instance, is a list of every single funeral director in New South Wales that they can link to. Stuff like that. That's the information that we want to be able to provide to people. How to get support. So grief counselling, for instance, how to apply for a death certificate, and that means after, because 99% of the time you guys actually apply for them online when you process the death registration. So that's about how do you get it if you need another one or if you didn't get it at the time. And there's about transfer of services, how to execute a will, etc. So this is just dummy information, no one's checked it, it's not real. So this is about how the site works and how it's going to be used. So get a death certificate, do this after the funeral. Well, we know that, as I just said, you guys would normally do this. So those sorts of things will change. So who is the user? So this is just some information about the types of users and what they said. And that's about a person experienced death of someone close to them. They needed to know the clear next steps. The options and requirements that they had to be informed about, and being able to, they said that they needed to feel supported and empowered during the process. Now, I'm a massive, and so are my staff, huge advocate for you guys, because we know you take families through that journey of grief and all of the work that you have to go through to actually support those people when you do your job, and you do a great job at that. So it's not about the fact that finding information about you guys, it's about actually getting the information about funeral directors, how the death process works, and then what happens afterwards is also part of it. So the first part is about death and ceremony, then the next part is about estate management. So by end to end, we're looking at the whole process. We've just started with this first slice. This is what started to come out of that. And then we'll go on to different pieces around estate management, work with the Supreme Court. We're working with the Coroner's Court, police. So there's all parts of government involved in this piece of work. But how you can help, you can visit the beta site. We'll send out the information again after today's sessions. But I'd encourage you to, if you've got the time, to go and talk to Ben and have a little bit of a look and find out some more information, to go and have a chat to him after you've had your tour. Questions?
Okay, just in relation to the questions, if anyone has a question, could you just please put your hand in the air? We'll get a microphone to you. We have 3 microphone runners. So the first question down here.
Hi, I'm Colleen. I'm the Senior Social Worker here at Forensic Medicine. So can families download this app? Is this available now, or is it in development?
So it's in development at the moment. So we want as many funeral directors as possible, and they have got a group of citizens. But if you know of anybody that would like to participate, if Ben gives you his details, and he'll be able to contact them, and we would love more citizens to be able to interact.
Okay. When do you think it will be ready?
What's the intended launch date? So we're looking at July and it won't be a fully formed system, but it'll be the beginning of where it ends up.
Okay, great. Sounds great. I think a lot of families will really appreciate it.
Hope so. I think it'll be a great piece of work.
What initiated this?
Sorry?
What ignited this? Why are you doing this?
So there's a whole heap of life journey work happening across the country. So New South Wales particularly is looking at end of life, and it's about how we can, as a government, better serve our citizens. And it's about, we realise that death is, and as I said, you guys know this probably better than most people in our community, that it is a difficult process to navigate, particularly if you've never done it before. So it's not even necessarily about how to get a funeral director. It's almost the bulk of the difficult stuff comes afterwards. And so this will give people that end-to-end view of, you know, if someone's sick, what do you do? Who do you contact? If someone dies, what's the first step? You contact a funeral director on most occasions. And then it'll walk you through, so do you need a lawyer? Do you need to go to the Supreme Court? All of those things will come as part of this navigator to be able to point people in the right direction and just help them on that difficult journey.
So we're just a stepping stone for you to help people finalise their probate, their lives, Centrelink, blah, blah, blah.
So,
End of life journey, are you worrying about people's, dying, passing away, where they're going to be buried or cremated, or are you worrying about their financial position? Is that what this is all really about?
So it's about giving citizens information that they need, but all in one place, because it is difficult sometimes to understand what you need to do in the process. So we know that you guys refer people to all sorts of places, and you have amazing resources in what you do, and I am, as I said, the biggest advocate you could possibly ever get for you guys, and that's why I want you involved in this process, because without you it won't be as good as what it could be. So it's about the whole journey.
Just wondering how you're going to be marketing this. It's all fair and well to have a system like this in place, but how are people going to be aware of it?
So we haven't got to that spot yet. So we're still, as I said, we're still in development, and I'd say it will be a soft launch in July. It's not going to be a big bang, because we need to see how it goes, how it needs to improve, and it will be a website that will change over coming months. I have no doubt, because it'll have to have all of the information that's in it. Gentlemen.
Just a quick one. Is Life Journey, the Life Journey project, are you partnering with the New South Wales trustee and guardian at all?
So I was the sponsor of the first bit, which was death and ceremony, and Adam Dent, who is the head of trustee and guardian, is the sponsor of the current piece of work that's being done on Life Journeys, and that's the estate management piece. And so Don McLennan, who's here with us tonight, and he will speak in a little while from Coroners, he's also involved as well. We've got police in there, we've got health, Service New South Wales, the Supreme Court, and several other agencies as well that come in and out. And we also have some specialist Indigenous consultants with us as well.
Thank you.
Oh, two more, and then I think I'm going to have to call it quits because...
Thank you. Just curious, will the system be attached to other processes with the government? Like, for example, will cancel your driver license or will cancel your registration for vote? Or will create or feed any other database?
So this particular website is about information and how to navigate through the process. One of the other products that we will be looking at is a product that talks about how we notify people when someone has passed away on their behalf or on the estate's behalf. So yes, that is one of the things that we'll be looking at. This gentleman here, I think, is our last.
Do
There'll be another Q&A.
do we know whether or not New South Wales Life Journeys has connected across other states? So in other words, is there a connection between some of our, because many people move between states quite often in their elder life from time to time, so would that be the case, or you're trying to connect with any of the other states at this stage, or are they doing similar work?
So the work that we're doing is, so it's state-based, but we're building things to be able to be scalable across the country. So when I leave here this evening, one of my staff and I are going to Queensland, and we'll be working for the next 2 days on the beginning of Life Journey. So we're actually working with the rest of the country, including all of our IT people from the States and the Commonwealth, on how we better deal with the beginning of Life Journey as well. So we're doing all different sorts of life journeys, and one of the other life journeys that's being done out of the team in New South Wales at the moment is what's the seniors project that they've just started, Ben? Oh, they've just started a seniors project. So there's all different types of life journeys that they'll be working on, and they're making them so that they're as scalable as possible across the whole nation. And the work that we were just talking about then around notifying others, that is, we are working on that from the beginning as how can we do that nationally, not state-based, but we're driving it out of New South Wales. So we're doing more and more work across the country. The registrars work very, very closely, but this work is all very new, but we're all quite involved because we realise we have a transient population as well. So thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of it. I have to get off, or my staff are going to kick me off. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. Just while touching on Amanda's presentation there, she mentioned that Ben Finn is here this afternoon, and we're actually looking for volunteers today after our presentation and tour is completed. If anybody would like to volunteer to test the pilot version on the website, it is not yet the finished product, of course, and there will be improvements to it, and your feedback would be very helpful in that. It would only take around about 10 minutes. You can use your own devices, your iPads. We have a couple of laptops here, I believe, Ben. But if there's anybody who would like to be involved in that, could you perhaps just indicate? Yes, okay, we'll take as many as we can get, but, you know, whatever is on offer. So, look, if you could just remember, I will remind you at the end of the presentations today, and you'll see Ben up there. He's the man just ducking down under the camera now as we speak, and we'll organise to get that done. It'll only take around about 10 minutes, and it would be very, very helpful. Okay, So, moving on to our next presenter. And our next presenter is Deb Jenkins. Deb has been with the registry for about 16 years now. During that time, she has been an acting assistant registrar of our registrations division, our client services division, and our identity securities division. She has also worked on the LifeLink project prior to its introduction for about 18 months, and she is currently the manager of Death, Marriage and Relationship Registration Services, more commonly known as DRMS. To hear more about the role DMRS plays in the registry's operations, would you please welcome Deb Jenkins.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm not used to speaking with a microphone. Usually my voice is loud enough to carry. So welcome to our forum for this year. I'd just like to spend some time and let you know where the action happens, actually, where all the work happens as far as registering the deaths that you submit online to us. So as Tony said, I'm the manager of the Death, Marriage, Registration and Relationship section. So I'd like to give you an overview of what we do. So the registry is responsible for the administration of Birth, Death, Marriage Registration Act of 1995 and the Marriage Act 1961. It's not. So our vision for the registry is our lives, our stories, to keep it safe for eternity. As you know, everything that we register is registered in perpetuity. It's forever and ever and ever. So in years to come, your family, your descendants can come back and trace us. Our mission is to protect the identities of the New South Wales community and to assist those in need. I don't have the magic touch, I don't think. So our services, we register life events, births, deaths, marriages and relationships, change of name, change of sex. Have I missed anything? Adoption, surrogacy, lots of things. We issue certificates for life events, standard and commemorative certificates. We issue single status certificates. We perform civil marriage ceremonies and relationship ceremonies. We provide family history information, and we provide statistical information to places like ABS and other government organisations. This is a trick clicker, isn't it? It's not working. There we go. So the Death, Marriages and Relationship section, DMRS, as I said, we're responsible for registering all the deaths, marriages and relationships in New South Wales. As you know, your funeral directors are required to lodge online, as is obliged by the Act. Both funeral directors and marriage celebrants have the opportunity to lodge online. Marriage celebrants are not obliged to because they work under a different legislation. However, most of our work coming through from marriage celebrants are paper-based. So we are registering all the deaths. So all the causes of death that you send through, they come to my section. We data enter those. You put your information in on your side of the system. They match together and that creates a registration. From there we can print a certificate. My staff also look after registration of relationships. So the current staffing level is one manager, myself, one team leader, which is Brenda, who's up the back there. I have 3 senior client service officers and 10 client service officers, and they do all the work. Not to mention assistance from our stakeholder support people, Anne and Rebecca. And I think I need a new battery. So, some statistics for your information. From 2015 to 2019, you can see by the statistics, we're quite busy. And I've included birth registrations here as well, which is not my area. It belongs to Natasha, but we're still very, very busy and across the board. So, and you can see that across the board that, for instance, deaths back in 2015, we registered 52,404. And it's around about that 52 to 54,000 registrations per year, which is quite a lot, considering that every one of those has a cause of death or a notice of disposal that needs to be created by my staff, okay? We've also got marriages, around about approximately 40,000 a year that need to be registered. I'm not sure of the percentage of online ones, but 66% have done online, but that leaves the other 40-odd% for us to do, okay? Relationships, as you can see, is a growing concern. Back in 2015, we registered 4,860 relationships for New South Wales. In 2018, we registered 7,890, and to date we've done 2,782. So it's growing, it's a growing concern every year, okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? No? Thanks, Beck. So that's my bit of information. Have anybody? Yes?
Just a question registering. When we send you the cause of death certificate, and then that's married up with the registration when it goes through. In the last month, I've just had one where after a month we followed up to see why the registration wasn't coming through. And we were told that because the official name of the person, in this case, let's say it was Rosalia, and yet her death certificate was Rosa, it rejected it. And, okay, we fixed that very quickly. But the question is, what is in place for you to notice that? I'm assuming it's an automatic thing.
We have a report that we can run from the system that if anything is non-compliant or it sits there just in a compliant state but not matched, we can run a report. And
yeah, but when? How do you pick that up? It was picked up because we questioned it, not because
it's
the
something
system.
that we'd like to run, and if we have the opportunity to run that report, then we do that. And if there are so many on there, my staff will chase them up one by one to find out why they haven't registered. They'll search the system. They may find that there's a match and then match them themselves, or it could be that the death registration is in a completely different name and we have to follow up with the funeral director. Yes? Hang on. This lady, go on.
So what information on the medical cause of death has to be, like, is that where you get your information
from?
The
matching criteria has to be the deceased person's name, the date of death and the place of death. Okay, so for instance, if the cause of death is saying Nepean Hospital and the suburb is Kingswood, but the funeral director enters Nepean Hospital Penrith, it may cause a conflict. However, when we are registering, what will happen is it will come up with a possible match and we will match it that way.
So when, does it always fall back onto the funeral director? Say if the doctor's written an old address or an old name for a nursing home, does it always fall back onto the funeral director to chase that doctor?
It would be best if you could get it in the first instance rather than if you got it straight away and you know that it's incorrect. It would be good if you could ask them to check it or correct it, because otherwise if it comes to us then you're waiting that time to get it fixed, okay? So for us to then reject it and then us to chase it up, it's like we need to work together. So if you see something that's wrong on there, if you can get it fixed by the doctor first, that'd be great. But if it comes through to us, then we need to chase it up.
Hi.
I'll just say that one of the things that we've realised is that sometimes that you do have difficulties with doctors and you do have difficulty getting that change if you need it. So the guys are there if you need it and you do run into that issue and you're having trouble, then we can actually work with that. And sometimes trouble, give the guys a ring and let them know you're having trouble, and that way they'll be able to help you as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But our Deb's team and also stakeholders are happy to help you if anyone runs into any problems.
We've probably got time for just one more question.
This lady here in the front here. Have you got? Yeah.
Hi. Just going back to that, I had 4 in the last 3 months that happened to, and we had no idea why they hadn't been completed, and we had sent in a few emails, and then finally we got the notification back of what the errors were on the death certificates, and then I rang up all the hospitals and I got the death certificates done, because the problem we have is that we could have done the most amazing job in the world, but when something goes wrong, the death certificate, it blows everything out the water.
Yes, of course.
And we look incompetent. So if there is a problem, it'd be great if you let us know ASAP.
We
Because
try to,
it's- I
but
know
when
you
we're
guys-
talking about the volume that
I
we receive
understand
every
that,
day.
and I get that, and I think the problem is the workload on you as well. So if we knew that, we can get on it straight away and get it fixed.
What happens
I
is
know
my
with
staff,
shifts
if
and
they make
stuff.
something non-compliant because the information is incorrect, will contact the funeral director or whoever they require to do that. But you've also got to understand that the hospitals and doctors
We get all
are
that.
fairly non-responsive
But
at
it'd be
times
nice
to
that-
both yourself and
We'd
to
like the
us.
opportunity first, if it was possible, rather than you guys waiting for calls to come back, because we want to get it done, so we're more persistent.
Yep.
We are busy like you guys, and I understand you're in a government department, so we probably want to get it done more because our name's at the end of it, even though we're not responsible with the BDM.
I agree.
I'm very happy to ring Liverpool Hospital 10 times to get the death certificate.
Great.
So if we
That's
knew
good to know.
about the mistake, we'll get it corrected. Because sometimes we get so busy and we're scanning them off and we're sending them, that I had one the other day that the doctor had written their name in the name of the death and vice versa. Because the death certificate pages are so big now, that's a problem we have. Because we're digital, some doctors, won't copy it and stuff like that. So we have a lot of problem. Yeah. So thank you. Just give us the opportunity to fix it.
This evening we'll actually take away with us,
Yep.
and we'll come back to you.
Because
we'll try and find some sort
Because I'm really happy to get it done because we want
Yeah.
to get it done.
Well, of course, your clients are our clients, so we'd like to get them done and dusted as well.
Yeah, we do, because then it's
Yeah.
off our system and
Yep,
we move on.
of course. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
One more.
I really like to raise this while you've done that, is that the design of the medical certificate from the doctor, the current certificate, isn't practical. It's not our issue.
time to be reviewed.
Yeah, it has to be.
Realise that it has to be reviewed.
We went to a nursing home the other evening and the guy goes to us, I can't put the death certificate in the fax machine. Like, dude. It's just not practical.
That it's an issue, and we're actually looking at them across the whole country.
And the guy's only 35.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deb. Okay, thanks very much, Deb. Just in case some of you might be wondering why we've got the cameras up the back here. No, it's not another series of Hatch, Match and Dispatch. This forum today is being live streamed. We have about 30 people in country or rural areas who are taking this live as we speak now. So that's what it's all about. But just on Hatch, Match and Dispatch, I don't know if you all might know, but that has now been shown 4 times on the ABC. We started out, I think, on prime time at about 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. The latest showing was about 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. But hey, 4 showings of Hatch, Match and Dispatch. It's something we're particularly proud of. Anyway, on to our next presenter. And unlike Amanda and Deb, our next presenter, Rebecca, has only been with the registry for about 4.5 years. However, she's packed a lot into that time in the Client Services Division, where she held the position of team leader and acting production manager. She has also had stints in the executive unit, and for the last 2 years she's been a valuable member of the stakeholder support unit. Rebecca, along with Anne Mitchell, who is here as well today, up the back there, has had daily contact with many of you here in the room this afternoon. So to hear more about the Stakeholder Support Unit and how they can assist you in your daily roles, please welcome Rebecca McHale.
Thank you, Tony. That wasn't pleasant. I'll try not to walk past there again. I'm not sure if this clicker's working, so I might just stay relatively... Oh, look, there we go. Good to go? I did, yeah, that's okay. Not ready to move forwards just yet. Thanks, Amanda. So I'm a part of the stakeholder support team. We are a very small team of two, so myself and Anne Mitchell. Anne, if you could just come forward a little so you can give everybody a wave. I know a lot of you will know Anne because she's worked in this section for quite a few years and has a wealth of knowledge. So thanks so much for coming along this afternoon. It's really great to see your faces. We're often dealing with you remotely over the phone or via email, so it is great to have the opportunity to get together in person and at an event like this one. As far as stakeholder support goes, we do work with a number of different business partners and stakeholders at the registry, funeral directors of course, marriage celebrants, hospitals, midwives, family historians. So I guess we get a bit of a bird's eye view across the registry in general. We do work very closely with the e-registry online portal where most of you would submit notifications to register deaths in the state. Things like access, any troubleshooting, support materials, guidance, etc. We're available on both phone and email. One of the teams we do work most closely with is Deb's team in DMRS. So we generally have a pretty good idea of what's happening in death registrations on a day-to-day basis, not only internally, but with our interactions with you as well as stakeholders. So what I'd like to talk to you about this afternoon is really how we can work together to make the registration process as smooth as we possibly can. Late in 2018, so late last year, we ran a survey of funeral directors. Some of you may have responded to that. Some of the comments that we received around that were asking for things like tips, tricks, hints, what do we need to do to make the registration process or the amendments process a smoother one. So today we provided you with this little pack. So inside of the pack, you'll find some key contact details, various forms like the funeral director correct and entry application, new user access forms, but we've also provided some support materials in the form of some short articles to provide a bit more information around things like recording marital status, perinatal death, and some tips around checking details and things before information comes through to the registry. There's also a brochure in there, a recently published one from the coroners, just around the initial steps after a death's reported to the coroner as well. So that might be helpful when you are dealing with any families working with the coroners as well. So please, I encourage you to take the resources back to your teams, make them widely available in your office, pop our contact details up on the wall so you can get in touch with us as needed. So as we come into what we anticipate or what's usually a busier time of year for deaths, I really wanted to share with you 3 key actions that you can take to just assist to make the death registration process and the amendments process a little bit smoother. So many of you in the room may be already following these processes, fantastic. For anyone that might not be aware of them, we just wanted to encourage you to take action on these 3 things where you can. So the first one relates to forwarding cause of death information as soon as you receive it to the registry. We find this happens in most cases. Every now and again, a medical or a coroner's order of disposal will come through after the burial or cremation, and that just tends to elongate the process of the death being registered. So the second one is checking key details for accuracy, so I'll go into a bit more detail around this, but there were some questions asked on this with Deb just now, so we'll go into more detail around that. And also just using the designated form and email address for any corrections that you're requesting as well. So if we take a look at that first key action, this is around submitting information around the cause of death as soon as possible. So up on the screen, we've just got a very simple graph depicting the information required to create a death registration. So first of all, we've got our cause of death information, either the medical certificate cause of death or coroner's orders of disposal. So as Deb mentioned, this is data entered at BDM. We've then got the information that you submit to us online based on the details provided to you by the informant. So this is submitted to us after the interment of the body. So once we have both pieces of information in the form of the cause of death and the death registration statement, the death can then be registered provided the details do match. And any certificates ordered and paid for in a registry will automatically print. So if you can get those through as soon as you receive them, it will definitely make the process a smoother one. So on to the second key action. This is around detail checking. And this is something that did get raised during the last Q&A. And, you know, what do you do if the details don't match? You know, based on the information the informant's provided you and the medical certificate or the coroner's order. So what we would like to ask you to do, if you're able, is to cross-check the information the doctor or coroner has noted on the cause of death information with the information provided to you by the family. If you do notice any discrepancies, please still send the cause of death through to us as soon as possible. Maybe just make a note on the email when you're sending it through that there is a discrepancy, and we can then still data enter it in order of date received and make sure that we can follow that up with the relevant doctor or coroner so that it's not then holding the registration up. On detail checking, something else that you can do, I guess, best practice for details checking before information is submitted to the registry is to provide a printed copy or even email the informant or the family of a deceased with the details that you have prepared online ready to submit to the registry. So in e-registry, we do actually have a print function located in your drafts list. And from there, you can generate a PDF of the details that you've data entered that can be either emailed or printed for the family as well. So that essentially just minimises any errors that might hold up the registration itself, and also minimises any death certificates going out with incorrect information as well. So the third key action relates to the correction process itself. So I think it was July 2018, so maybe close to 12 months ago, we did introduce a new form specifically for funeral directors so that you can utilise that within those 2 months following the death registration being submitted online to apply to correct any information on death certificates. The reason that this form was created, and Amanda was a huge driving force behind this, was so that we could actually separate out any applications to make amendments by funeral directors and prioritise them. So we understand you're under a lot of pressure to get corrected certificates out to families. So the main changes with this form is that it can now be emailed through to the registry. So there's no need to, post it in and wait for it to arrive. And the other thing as well is that you no longer need to return the original certificate with the correction form, so you will just note the barcode from that certificate on the form and destroy the form securely at your premises, once again saving time on postage for the form arriving with us. So if I think most people are actually using the form. I don't see too many coming through on any old forms, but using the form does help us to identify it as a funeral director correction so that we can then prioritise it. The other thing that's really important is to make sure that you send that through to the correct email address. So that's the BDM eDeaths email address up on the screen. If we can ask that you refrain from sending these applications to multiple email addresses, as that does tend to slow the process down a little. If you direct them to this email address, then they'll fall into the right hands so they can be actioned as soon as possible. So before we go to Q&A, I guess a quick summary. Please take your resource pack with you. If you don't already have one, we've got lots of spares out on the front registrations desk. If there's 3 things that you can assist with to help the process run smoothly, send in your cause of death information straight away, check key details between the cause of death and death registration statement, ask families to check details you're submitting, and if you can use the correct form and email address for any amendments that you're requesting, that would really help the process to run quite smoothly. And also, if there's ever anything that you need, that you're unsure about when you're registering, you're not sure what to do with it, please contact us. We're more than happy to help, especially where there are doctors involved that may be hard to get in contact with. We feel the pain as well sometimes, but we're happy to make those calls on your behalf so it's not all resting on you. We know you've got a lot to do as well. Questions? We'll come back to you in a moment.
The idea of sending through death certificates to you is a great idea. The problem with that is just sending it to you. It's not willy-nilly, you're marking it, but most of the time you lose the electronic or faxed certificate. Let's be straight up frank.
You talk
on a
about
death, so I
medical?
won't do what you're asking because of the breakdown that generally happens. Certificates seem to be lost. One page, the other page isn't missing. Unless you can give me a registration style form, so if you want me to send you a certificate immediately as soon as I receive it, you'll need to give me something that registers or logs that you've got the certificate, other than my sending you a request that you've opened my email.
I actually completely disagree with that, sorry. I found the turnaround time with BDM is fantastic. We send the MC cities straight away, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I have issues.
Okay.
Like,
Are you sending them via fax at the moment, or?
Actually get your details so that the girls can actually contact
Yeah.
you and work.
So I put in a new process in my office. Like, these guys don't work in my office. I don't know, I'm not as fortunate as they seem to be. But I've put processes into my office where now I've got a 3-step process to check you to make sure you get the certificate and that my job gets done and my death's registered and my family are happy and not chasing me. Because you seem, when people call up, there's 2 types of messages families get that I've found. One is your funeral director hasn't given us the information, we don't have anything, nothing's there to be registered, or you'll need to contact your funeral director, and this one works really well. There seems to be, there's a breakdown there, we're missing some of the information, could you go back and ask them? That one works really well. But the one when you say, I've got nothing, we haven't received anything, and we've done that, you don't respond really well. Just sending me an email, like when we're quite busy, it's not enough. My sister said to you a bit earlier about a phone call or something else, but I know you work hard. I know there's only a limited amount of people in your team, and you say that 50,000 deaths is a lot of deaths for your office, which I find that it's amount of resources. If you know, and it just shows you there, over the last 5-6 years, you've got a 50-odd thousand amount of deaths to be registered per annum, you'd feel that you'd have enough people in there to handle that.
So can I suggest that, so that we can move on, because there's lots of other people with questions, we'll get your details. What we've done with other funeral directors that have had some specific issues, We've actually sent staff out to work with you, to work through the issues so that we can come up with systems. So I'm happy for us to do that for you, but I think we need to let other people have an opportunity to talk as well. But we will get your details and we will work directly with you.
I don't need you to come to my office to do any of that, but it's not my breakdown. Just a quick question. So if you guys can send an email to tell us that the registrations are complete and certificates are being issued, why can't an email be sent to say that there's a discrepancy, please check the information again?
So we'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
Occasionally we have those problems as well, but I've actually noticed if you actually go into the lodgement section, maybe once every couple of weeks, you can actually see that it's stuck on in progress and hasn't been printed. So I found that helps me a lot to identify where there's going to be some issues.
That's a really good point. Thanks for raising that. So for everyone using eRegistry, you do get status updates in the status column. So with certificates, it will generally show as in progress until midnight, the night that it's been printed, because that's the point that the system recognises as a registered post tracking number on there, and that will show as complete. If you have any concerns about any registrations or notifications, I should say, showing on your statements list that are still sitting and showing in progress, please contact us. We can usually resolve it on the spot over the phone or send you a return email to say if there is further information required. So they can be resolved quite quickly. So if you do notice something on there you're concerned about, please get in touch.
Sorry, one sec. No.
When you're sending in for the correction of the death certificate, you say we don't need to send the original one back to you. Do we also need, though, to get identification, like their driver's licence or things like that, and send it back in as verification of them making the change, or is it just from us as funeral directors?
So the form is specifically for funeral directors. So if it's coming from a funeral director, we don't need you to send any further identification along with the application. If there are things that are being requested to be amended, in some situations we do require evidence in order to make the changes, especially where there's adding or removing of people's names, any updates to things like marital status. They're things we need to look closely at before we can make an amendment. In your resource packs today, there's a leaflet called Fact Sheet 18, and that's got a lot of information around the different types of amendments to death registrations, and also gives a guideline around evidence that you can provide to assist with those.
Rebecca, there's the gentleman at the back.
I think she might have answered it, but you don't require the original death certificate to be sent back, is that right?
No, we don't, yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to simplify the process as much as possible, and we found that it's worked quite well, and we're able to keep the processing times relatively low in that regard, and it just saves time on postage for that original certificate to get to us. So essentially on the new form, what you're signing is a statutory declaration saying I have destroyed this certificate, and you note the barcode of that certificate on there. So yeah, no need to send the original certificate.
Awesome. Great, thank you.
So where siblings obtain 2 or 3 different certificates, there's still only the one original and the others are copies of it? Is that how it works? It's a certified copy, is that right?
You might be better explaining it than me. It's Amanda's signature on there, so.
So there's only one original, and that is what the register is. And so these days it's formed electronically, and that register is the original, and everything that's ever printed from that is always a certified copy. So if you look at the endorsement down the bottom where the logo is and my signature, it actually says that it's a certified copy of the register. So, but it's printed on security paper. So, and the reason that we did what we did is because of feedback from you guys around how difficult it was to get corrections, and from that feedback we created the form. We worked with the Funeral Directors Associations, and as Beck said, it was important to me because my theory was that we need to trust you and work with you. And if you say that you have destroyed that and you've signed a document that says, then I trust you to say that that's what you've done. And that's why we made the changes, because it needed to be easier for you, so better to serve the person that you're looking after, because they're our customer as well. So it's a partnership, and it's about having some of that trust there.
Hi.
Hello up the back.
Yeah, hello. If we or the family notice a mistake on the medical cause, that, you know, doctors do mistakes as well, what process would you like, or can we take? Or are we emailing it to you and you follow that up?
Completely up to you. We're more than happy to follow up if you prefer for that to happen. We do notice that amongst funeral directors, a lot of you do already have a relationship with certain doctors or hospitals, and they'll get things done quite quickly for you. So if you feel like that would be the case and you're comfortable to approach the doctor.
So are we allowed to change the medical cause as long as we've spoken to the doctor?
No. So
No.
It has to come from the doctor
So you
themselves.
want to see his
Yeah, so
squiggle
you
on
can
it?
ask them to
Yeah.
make the amendment, but it has to be the doctor that originally completed and signed the form that makes any amendments to it.
So they have to date and sign it?
Correct, yeah. So anything that they change on that form, they do have to initial next to the change and the date that they've made the change as well. So
Okay,
if they're...
you can't do that?
No. No. So it's a form signed by the doctor, so any information on there, they should be privy to what's detailed on there. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks. Well done. Okay, we let the question time run on a little bit there, just because we were running a bit ahead of time, which is great. But that is now the registry side of things done and dusted. It's now time to move on to our last presenter today, which is Mr. Don McLennan, standing beside me here. He is the manager of Coronial Services New South Wales. Don has seen a lot of changes in his 15 years with coroners. Incidentally, this is the third coroners building in Sydney. The first was in the Rocks, which was from 1908 through to 1970, when it then moved to the former residence at Glebe. And of course, this magnificent building was opened on the 27th of January this year, and a lot of it has Don McLennan's touch to it, as he was on the building committee. He was on the building committee which helped shape the impressive facility we are in today. So to learn a little bit more about the role of the coroner and its various functions, it's now time to hear from the manager of Coronial Services New South Wales, Don McLennan.
Thank you, and welcome to our lovely building. We've been here for 4 or 5 months now. We're very, very happy to host tonight's function when we were asked to do it, because we're very proud. If any of you have seen Glebe, it was well past its use-by date. We were very happy to leave. I drove past the other week and I went, no, I don't miss you at all. And I think whilst I was involved in some committees on this build, there was a lot of things that we required, what we really wanted to have, and we wanted to be as best experience as we possibly could for the families who do come here. You can't make the experience great, and you people all know that, but you can make the experience as best you can. And I think we've achieved that here. And when you do get the tour after, I think you'll see. So we're very happy. It's very nice coming to work. I think on the time frames, the Rocks went from 1908 to 1970, and then from 1970 to this year. I don't think I'll be around for the next building, but I'm here with Anne Lambino and our registrar at the State Coroner's Court. So we work together. We have very different roles, but we work very closely together. So if there's any questions that I don't know the answer to, I'll either ignore them or hand them over to Anne. So I just want to say, how good is photoshopping? And I'll get that off because you see. So look, what I'll do is I'll just tell you a bit about the coronial jurisdiction. We're that blimp in the way. When you don't get a doctor's certificate, you come to the coroner. We're the ones that cause that little delay in getting the body to the families. But what I want to do is just give you an idea how we work, because whilst you all work in the industry, sometimes it can be a little bit mysterious as to what the coroner actually does and why there's sometimes a delay. Whoops. Questions and answers. Press the wrong one. Big one in the middle. So Debbie put up a statistics before about there's around 50 to 52,000 deaths reported a year. Around 6,000 of those deaths are reported to the coroner each year. So we're looking at 6,000 deaths where a doctor hasn't issued a certificate, or they died in circumstances where a doctor cannot issue a certificate. A doctor can only write a death certificate for a known natural disease. Anything that's not a natural cause has to be reported to the coroner. A fall, accident, suicide, murder, things like that, hanging. We've seen doctors try to do it. They're wily little devils, but they can only issue a certificate. And they can't issue a certificate for an undetermined natural cause. They have to know what the disease is. So those deaths, the 6,000 deaths, are reported to the coroner. We do about 3,500 here at Glebe, and the remainder are in the country, in the regional areas in New South Wales. At Lidcombe, I will say Glebe because I'm so used to saying it. At Lidcombe, we have 6 coroners. We have an acting state coroner at the moment, and we have 5 deputy state coroners, and they're referred to as the senior coroners. In the country areas, there's the magistrates that work in the major cities like Wagga, Dubbo, Newcastle, Wollongong sit as a coroner, so the deaths are reported to those coroners there. We have, of course, the metropolitan deaths, and all the deaths within the metropolitan area of Sydney are brought into Lidcombe as a mortuary. The deaths in the regional area is a little bit different. All the postmortems that are performed in New South Wales are performed on the east coast, Newcastle, Sydney or Wollongong. And there's a number of reasons for that. The main reason is it's very difficult to attract forensic pathologists, and when you do, it's very difficult to get them to work on the other side of the mountain. So they all work on the east coast. So the problem is you have people dying in Broken Hill, Dubbo, long distances to travel to come to have a postmortem. So in the country, and I'll use Dubbo as an example, if someone died, it's a reportable death to the coroner. The body goes to the local mortuary, the death's reported to the coroner. The coroner then triages the death with the duty pathologist. So the duty pathologist will look at it and suggest to the coroner, I've got a phone, it's a walking phone that tells me to move every so often, so it's going in the bin tonight. So it's a watch, one of those exercise watches that really, anyhow. And so the pathologist will suggest to the coroner what they think is the appropriate examination that needs to be done on the person, or whether examination is required at all. So if that body does require an examination, it's moved from that location to either Newcastle or Sydney, and the postmortem will be undertaken. If by chance there's no examination required, where the coroner can issue a coroner's certificate, or they can do something else that doesn't require an invasive examination, the body can stay at Dubbo and then be released to the family very shortly after. So that's the difference between metropolitan and regional death. Here at Lidcombe, we're one of only 2 forensic facilities in Australia, Victoria and New South Wales, that actually we work alongside forensic services, so we're in the same building together. It's a collaborative approach and it works very well. One of the main reasons it works very well is because we have a unit here within the building. It's called the Coronial Case Management Unit, and it's been going for about 18 months, is that right? Ian got it up and running. And it's a unit where when a body is reported to the coroner, this unit has social workers, duty pathologist, duty coroner, a nurse, radiologists, and what they do is they then every morning review the file, make contact directly with the family that day, and make decisions in a very quick time as to what happens, and the family's informed, and then the orders are made by the coroner. Well, I've done it again. So what types of deaths are reported to the coroner? I told you, indicated before, it's those deaths where a doctor cannot prescribe or cannot write a medical certificate of death. Now, the Coroners Act also prescribes a certain deaths that are reported to the coroner. So it's violent, unnatural, or it's suspicious or unknown, or where a doctor just hasn't issued a certificate. And again, we get around. When you look at those figures that Debbie put up, you see the figures don't change. We've got this growing population, but it sits around the 50,000, 52,000, doesn't change a lot. We've, for the last 12 years, always had around 5 to 6,000 deaths. It hasn't changed a lot. So I don't know why that is. You expect with more population there'd be more deaths, and it really doesn't happen that way. And I noticed last year there was less deaths than the year before, so it's an interesting trend. So once those deaths are reported to the coroner has to make five decisions. They have to be satisfied of the identity, the date and place of death. They don't have to make a determination as a time, and they have to be satisfied as the manner and cause. Those are the 5 questions that the coroner must ask or must satisfy before they can finalise the matter, but before the body can be released. So the body comes in, the coroner has to be satisfied as to the identity. It cannot be released, the body cannot be released until the coroner has been given enough evidence or material to be satisfied of that person's identity. Did I go back again, did I? I'm really doing well on this. The coroner then will make a determination as to what examination is required. So, for instance, the person that passed away yesterday, they reported to the coroner. We've had the meeting today. The coroner decides 1, do I need to have a post-mortem? 2, what type of post-mortem do I have to order? And our Act says the coroner must do the least invasive post-mortem. So that's compliant. When I first started in this role, everybody that was reported to the coroner had a 3-cavity post-mortem. There was no ifs or buts. Now, we're looking at around only about 40% have the full post-mortems out of all those persons that are reported. When the coroner makes that determination, they then have to decide what sort of investigation is required of them by the police. So the police, they then direct the police as to investigating the death, and they, unlike magistrates in local courts and criminal matters, they run the investigation from the very beginning. So it's their decision as to what type of investigation and what are the issues they need to look at. Once all that material comes in, the brief and the post-mortem, the coroner then has to decide what they do with the matter. Do they dispense with it? Are they satisfied of those 5 criteria? Or do they have an inquest? Out of the 6 or so thousand deaths every year, we only do about 120 inquests statewide. Not a lot of inquests, about 2%. Some of them are mandatory, like deaths in custody, deaths in police operation. Have an inquest going on at the moment today of a young boy who was killed. The stepfather, I think, he's been convicted of the homicide. He was the one where he suggested the little fellow died from a pogo stick fall, but it turned out that he'd suffered years of abuse. So the coroner's looking at that today, or over the coming week, because there's a suggestion that facts were notified a number of times and just didn't do anything. So the coroner's looking at that. Most of the matters we get are dispensed with, and we do hold about 100 or so inquests a year, and most of the time you'll see us on the news. Coroner's certificates are something we've only had for about 5 years. This was at a time where we had a coroner who had a death reported to him. He felt that a doctor should have issued a certificate, and I noticed there's this one theme, trouble with doctors. We have trouble with doctors too. They don't issue certificates. And it's not the form, they just don't want to issue certificates. So the coroner was satisfied this person died of a natural disease. Didn't want the person to go through a post-mortem, so to say, why do we need to have a post-mortem? Well, I know what's caused the death. The pathologist's telling me what this person died of. And we then started bringing into this thing where the coroner issued a certificate as to the death without having sort of any post-mortem examination. We issue around 1,500 of those a year now. So it's 1,500 of those certificates where a person doesn't have to go to a post-mortem. I've talked about identification. I'm just wary of the time because I don't get wound up here. Next of kin issues. Normally I hear a groan from funeral directors when I say that. We have a lot of issues in next of kin issues. I'm sure you have them out there as well. We have disputes as to who's the appropriate next of kin. Our Act actually tells us in priority who in priority is the next of kin. and we'll have certain disputes in relation to those. But again, if there's a next of kin issue, we can't release the body. If there's competing claims as to who should be the appropriate senior next of kin, as to who has the right to take the body, that'll get put before the coroner, and the coroner will need to decide. If the coroner can't decide, it goes off to the Supreme Court. Now, we've got 2 matters in the Supreme Court at the moment. One's 8 weeks old. Now, the body stays here until that's completed. And we're not expecting a decision from the Supreme Court till July. They can get very complicated. We use our counsellors a lot of the time to try and get the parties to talk, but it can be a major issue for us. The burial and disposal order, which is what you guys want to get the body, is issued by the coroner once the coroner is satisfied of the identity, once the pathologist has indicated to the coroner that he doesn't require the body anymore, and the body can be released. And there's no issues to prevent the body being released. All I want to say in relation to that, probably this should be to hear, don't plan a funeral until you've been told the burial order is going to be issued. Because things can hold it up. Whilst the post-mortem might be finished, there might be an organ retention, there might be a senior next of kin dispute, there might be an identification issue, there might be some sort of problem. So until you're told that the burial order is going to be issued, don't give it a date. Just hold them up. Most of the time it's not a problem, but a lot of the times we get phone calls where funeral directors say, funeral's tomorrow, and we know that we've got a senior next of kin dispute going on, or there's an identification issue, or an organ's being retained by the pathologist. So that's all I just want to say about that. I don't want any horrible questions after it about it. I know there'll be examples where you've got cremation permit overseas in Victoria. Has anyone had an overseas death where the body's come back in? Show of hands, and you want to get them cremated, and New South Wales Health says we don't recognise it. And so what we do, we had a coroner in the past recognise that this is a problem. New South Wales Health, in their wisdom, and I say that just in case they're standing here somewhere, decided some years ago that they weren't recognising overseas death certificates and they weren't recognising overseas cremation certificates. And so people who unfortunately had a loved one die overseas and their body was repatriated and they wanted the body cremated were unable to do it. We do have provision here where the coroner will issue a coroner permit for cremation, but we need the information some days in advance. If you can provide us with the documentation you have from overseas, that it's in English, it always helps, and that you give us a few days' notice. We don't have a big staff out here. We've got, I think, 14 staff that do all those deaths, and that's not a lot of staff, especially if you've got court sitting. That means you've got staff sitting out of the registry in court, so there's not a great number of staff. So if you give us those a few days' notice, we can issue those crem permits if we're satisfied. They all come to me to give approval. If we're satisfied it's appropriate, as normal crem permits are to be issued. So that does get around that. We've been working with Health for many years to try and get them to sort of move on this, and they're like a immovable wall. Okay, it's plan a funeral. I told you not to do that. Can I just say, just before I get hit with these horrible questions, when I first started in this role, the relationship between coroners and funeral directors, and perhaps Department of Forensic and funeral directors, wasn't that great. We didn't have any relationship, and it was like an us-them attitude. And I have personally tried I talk at conferences, the FDA and the AFDA and everything else starting with F, and I put articles in to try and break down those walls. And I find that I'm getting funeral directors ring me directly with issues and things like that. I hope that is breaking down a little bit, that wall. I think we all work for the same cause. We all work for the family. And there's going to be things that are going to go wrong. We know that. But in the end, we do all work for the family and for their benefit. We've got some very dedicated staff across coroners and across forensic medicine. And I think forums like this really go a long way to further break down those walls. BDM's improving. They're always trying to improve, and that's a great thing. We're always trying to improve. If you have a department that doesn't want to improve, I think that's where you've got problems. We're always looking at how we can improve our services. It can be slow. We're talking about government. We're talking about no funds. There's no votes in death, unfortunately. But that's the ultimate. The ultimate thing is we are trying to improve. So hopefully you've got something out of today. Hopefully you learnt something from me today. I hope you enjoy your tour, and because we're very happy with the building. But any questions?
I've got a question, if that's all right. Over the years, I've noticed the coronial process has improved amazingly, and it's really helping the families. There's just one tiny little area I was hoping you could maybe look at.
I'm blaming you.
It's just if someone passes away, say on Friday night, the
Yes.
family doesn't have any contact with anyone as to what the coronial process is until maybe Monday afternoon. At that point, they may not have contacted a funeral director either because they're a bit confused. Is there any way we could put a process in so that someone can telephone and talk to a next of kin to explain what the process is? The minute they're in the system with the lovely care support people, it's great. It's just that dead zone.
I know what you look. I understand exactly. Colleen from the Department of Forensic Medicine. She might be able to. Come on, Cole. She's going to be doing the tours here.
We provide an after-hours on-call service for families. We rely on the police when they're documenting the death and writing the report to the coroner, and that's called the P79A. They're expected to give a brochure to the next of kin, and on that brochure has our contact details. So there's someone here 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we've got an on-call service within the social work team where we will be able to respond to families if they ring in and make that request of us, and we do that already. So I suppose there's always, another little area in which we can improve, and we are working closely with police around contact with families, and we've actually just written a new brochure, haven't we? And that's on the website as well. So hopefully those measures might help address that issue.
I wasn't aware that there was a 24-hour call centre. I was aware of the brochure. I just think if someone has died quite suddenly by suicide or car accident, I'm not sure that families are really reading the brochure as clearly as they maybe should.
The difficult thing is people in that state normally don't sit down and go, let's Google it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because of their state, and it's really hard. And I think like sometimes with their pamphlet, they don't read it till months later. That's when they can do it.
Or we'll ask them and we'll say, are you aware of the process? And they'll say, we did get a brochure, we haven't read it.
Yeah. Look, I'm happy to raise that with our operations manager. That's more a Department of Forensic Medicine because they're going into the care of forensic medicine. And as coroners work, we work Monday to Friday. There's no weekend work. We have a duty coroner, but they certainly wouldn't know what's going on in terms of that. So I'm happy to raise that with the operation manager of forensic medicine.
It's just a small thing.
I
I'm
agree,
thinking, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, just an issue I've found with the social workers, with the families. Once we've got someone, they will ring to say that the body's ready to be released, right? So families ring. Okay, we've heard from the social worker; they're ready to be released. We ring the mortuary, paperwork's not down there, they're not ready to be released. It might not be the next day before they're ready to be released because the paperwork hasn't gone through to them. Especially we have an issue getting through to them sort of thing as well, which we understand they're busy. So we've got to say to the family it's not ready, but the social workers rang and said they're ready, but they're not ready because the paperwork's not down in hasn't been processed. I don't know if anyone else has had... Yes, the social worker, because they're thinking, so others have had that same problem, and the families get quite upset.
What we do say is that the body will be ready to be released after 5 o'clock.
No, well, they're not coming back saying that. They're saying they're ready now.
The body will be ready in the next 24 hours.
Maybe, or at hopefully, because they're thinking they're ready there and then, and they're saying, why isn't our loved one picked up today?
We also, on the other side of that, we can get a phone call from the family and the family will say, funeral director's telling me the body's not ready for release, I'll go in and have a look, documents already there. And then I have called the funeral director and said, family's called me, the body's not ready for release. Our paperwork indicates it's ready, and then we have a conversation to try and resolve what the issue is.
And how often is that? Because obviously it's here, everyone's having the same issue. word it maybe, because it's yeah. It's just as I said with
our operations manager, and maybe we can look at whether it is actually the social work role to provide that information, or it might be another department.
just whether if you relate with the mortuary that their paperwork is ready for us to be able to pick up. That seems to be the issue. Yeah, sort of. Sorry? Well, maybe. Well, that's something I don't know.
Someone's talking to me here while these people are still talking.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we might have to make this the last question. We do have the tour coming up very, very shortly, so if we'd like to take this.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, but just saying that maybe if it's the case of the family being notified by the coroner that yes, family is ready, maybe having it the family plus the director knowing, both being notified that that it's ready. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just take it back to our team and we'll take on board your recommendations. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I know, and it's so contentious. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Don. And thank you very much to everyone who's come along here today and participated. We really do appreciate it, and hopefully we can move forward and have more of these in the future. We do have the tour coming up right now, in fact, and Rob and Colleen are our guides for the tour. One group will start at the start, the other group will start at the finish. We'll meet somewhere in between and pass each other, but that way everyone can get through at the same time. There is some more treats and food out in the foyer there, so please help yourself to that on the way out. And don't forget those people who volunteered to spend 10 minutes with Ben Finn at the end of the tour. We really do appreciate that. It will help shape that website and make it as good as it can be. And just before you all go, a quick word from the Registrar, Amandiana.
So I just wanted to say again, thank you everyone for taking the time to come and spend a couple of hours with us this afternoon, and I'm sure you're all going to have a great time on the tour of the Coroner's Court. Any feedback that you can give us to help improve our services, we're open to listen, and I really appreciate it. So you've got all the email addresses on how to get in touch with us. We'll probably send out a Survey Monkey afterwards to get some feedback on what you thought of this evening and what we could do better next time, and when you'd like to see us have another one. I'd particularly like to thank all of the staff at Best Desert Marriages for organising all of this today. Liz, Rebecca, Debbie, Tony, thank you very much for all of your hard work. Have a safe trip, and I hope you enjoy yourselves, and thank you very much for coming.